Believe it or not, that says Hobgoblin. It looks way better in color, way more legible, trust me. Go figure, we have an odd, quirky front. This is Mike Hutchinson's Hobgoblin, a rank and flank fantasy game. And of course, as you can see, this is just a print-off of an advanced copy of the rules for QA and playtesting. The finished product, it'll be in full color, and it will contain deep narrative setting and illustrations exploring the deep catacombs of Rotvarlden. Published by Electi Studio at electi-studio.com. You can also go to planetsmashergames.com. That's Mike Hutchinson's website. And of course, Rule of Carnage, if you are here on the Uses and the Tubeses, for in-depth discussion over the last year about the development of Hobgoblin and all of the things that the new spins it puts on old familiar properties. As I said, it's a rank and flank game. Before we get into the two armies that I'm going to be using, let me just say I'm grateful to be able to share this with you. You know, one of the first videos to do so, because there's a lot of old familiar concepts in this game, but there's some new stuff. And so before we get to the armies, we need to talk about a couple of those. First of all, you've got this thing called keywords, which is kind of like traits, except it's very clearly spelled out which keywords are reserved for the core rules and then which keywords are applied as a result of purchasing what you think of as more traditional traits. I also wanted to go over something here real quick. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 base units. Light range, light, heavy for most of these, and we'll look at these in a little more detail later on. This is the core of the game right here, and really the core of the game steps in when you look at how these things interact. As a rank and flank game, this is kind of your cheat sheet here. So, and this is very evocative of something like Hordes of the Things. Well, if I have heavy infantry who are attacking heavy infantry, they're going to hit on a 5 or better. If I have heavy infantry that are attacking heavy cavalry, well, they're going to hit on a 5 or better. See, very cross-index, very easy. But you don't really need this. This is just to help you out. Because those keywords, cycling back to that, those are what determine how hard you hit. So there's 3 different things, and this is really the big reason we got to talk about this before we talk about our units. Unit sizes. Each of your units, and it's pretty obvious what it's going to be. You've got light, narrow, and horde. And your wide units are going to be things like, and we can even look at it over here. This is your light infantry, your heavy infantry. All of your block troops are going to be wide bases. It's not individual bases. It's just big, I guess you call it large scale bases. Very similar to DBA. You're using stands with wound counters, but we'll get to that in a minute. For now, suffice it to say, if my units look a little odd, it's because I am complying with these footprint-specific rules. So wide units are block troops, and narrow will be things like heroes or individual monsters, and of course hordes are the big blocks of troops. You also have to concern yourself with whether they are arrayed in close order or loose order. And then you're dealing with whether they are strong attack or strong attack, weak attack, strong or weak defense. So that's really the kind of 3, what would you call it? The 3 axes. That's the word I'm looking for. The 3 axes on which you're measuring troops. Are they in close order, loose order, or are they individuals? Are they arrayed on a wide base or a narrow base? And are they strong or weak with the attack and defense? And what winds up happening is there's a simple way to remember, right? So if I have a close order troop that's attacking a loose order troop, they'll hit on a 3 up on a d6. Loose order troops counterattacking will be hitting on a 5 up. And of course, if you are attacking your own kind of troops, a loose order troop attacking a loose order troops, they'll hit on 4 ups. So in other words, it's a 50-50 shot if you've got loose versus close. But if you are, and this is great, right? Very Napoleonic, very rock, paper, scissors. Loose troops are better against individual troops, but they're worse against close order troops. Likewise, close order troops are really good at attacking loose order troops, but they're not good at closing with and putting down your free individual monsters, right? So it's actually very intuitive with respect to that. And then you factor in now, which is the modifier, which is not, I don't care, because I'm just going to be referring to this all day. And then, of course, you have your standard traits that you apply. These are the trait keywords. Command, right? Implacable. Ravenous. So if you've got wolves on the table, which we will, The unit is engaged with a broken enemy, it gains Devour, and Devour means in the next movement phase, if there are one or more enemy units within 8 inches of this unit, it loses Devour and may activate. Oh, in other words, if it breaks a unit, it has to stop and eat them. Right? The wolves, they're hungry. They're not interested in just conquering the battlefield. You point them at a troop, say, go eat those guys. And if they beat that unit, then yeah, they're going to stop and have a little late night snack. So that's kind of the base core and just kind of the warning for why my units look a little odd. Or perhaps I should say they look a little odd in comparison to more traditional fare. These are the Bromans, and in the case of Hobgoblin, we are going to be using base sizes. Now you'll notice I have a couple of Sabbat bases here for my shooty boys and for my stabby boys. These guys both have a wide footprint, which is supposed to be 100 to 200 millimeters wide. Well, look, I've got a 3-inch base, which is 75 millimeters, all right, 82, whatever it is. It's 3 inches in normal, and it's less than 100. So we are way too small. I am gaming at half scale with my 15 millimeter figures. When it comes to movement, I am going to be cutting my movement rates in half. We'll look at that in a little bit. The minimum to maximum depth, these are supposed to be between 40 to 150 millimeters deep. Or, if you're gaming at half scale, 20 to 75. Well, at 2 inches, we're at 50, so we nailed it, brother. And then, likewise, my mounted boys back here are going to be on 3x2. I have 5 figures. I could drop a 6th in there, but I'm not going to, and I'll tell you why. Notice I've got 10 figures on each of my bases as well. I could fill up the bases with whatever I want, but I'm not going to, and I'll explain why later. Again, you can tell, loose order, close order, right? Remember we talked about that? It was only like 2 minutes ago, so I hope so. So let's talk about the stats for these guys. My Hobgoblins are going to be arrayed in 2 units of heavy cavalry. They have devastating charge. I hope we see what that means. They are strong on attack, strong on defense, and they have 12 movement points. With 1 movement point, you can move 1 inch. There's a little more to movement. We'll look at that in a bit. Our ranged infantry are wide, and they are loose-ordered, and they are weak on the attack, and they are just standard on the defense. Our heavy infantry have tough 1. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then, of course, they are strong on defense, and their attack is normal. The foot guys have a total of 8 movement points. I should also point out that our leader here, Hopper, I got to put him in the front center, don't I? Where's our one-legged wonder? Here we go. Here we go. King IHOP is right there. He is going to be our general, and we're also going to give him the battle standard, which has some morale effects. We'll get to that. These are our Hobgoblins. Our beasts are arrayed in loose order. They are nimble. They are wild. They are weak on defense and standard on strength. They are fairly fast. They get 12 movement points. And we have our first free unit. This is the Monster Chief. He is the general. He also has a standard. I guess it's the bow is like the Magic Goblin bow. Whatever. He is monstrous on the attack. And he is strong on the defense. And then we have 3 units of light cavalry. That's my feathered Xbox you hear peeping in the background. Say hi, Biscotti. We have 3 units of light cavalry. Now, notice that they are nimble. They have ranged 8, so they can shoot. And notice that they are arrayed in loose order. Their base sizes are slightly larger than their counterparts. The heavy knights over on the human side are arrayed in close order. So these guys are going to cover more ground, not just in terms of having a speed of 14, but also in terms of their base sizes are bigger. This game does not use figure removal when it comes to casualties. In fact, it doesn't use casualties at all. But I went ahead and put 5 figures to the base to help remind me that each of these figures effectively has what you traditionally think of as 10 wounds. And I think it's time to get into the game. We're already like 8 minutes into this video and we haven't rolled any dice, so my fingers are starting to itch to do that. I will point out, I don't think we're going to get through a full game of this. I want to throw these smallish forces. The game is designed to use between 3,000 and 5,000 points. The goblins are 1,850. So we're well below. We're only 2/3 of the way to a standard fighting force. Our Bromans are at 1,900. So it should be a fair matchup. But it's definitely on the small side for this game. And as I say, there are enough unusual concepts that I want to just take my time, shove some figures around the table, see how these things interact, see how hard it is to use these things, and maybe in a future video we'll dive a little bit deeper into how easy it is to use Hobgoblin to play truly massive rank and flank battles. Setting up a game is very simple. Roll for Chaos of War, and this being a Mike Hutchinson game, there are a lot of fun, quirky ways to set up your battlefield. You'll roll a D66, and for example, high ground. After setting up terrain, players may deploy one hill or other elevated terrain anywhere in play. So that's after you set up your terrain. I'm not going to be using these today. Bridge too far for an introductory scenario, and I am definitely in the introductory phase. Set up battlefield. Well, we've done that. We need to agree on keywords such as rough, blocking, or impassable. Well, we have one blocking and impassable feature there in the Wizard's Tower, and we have two rough patches here, just some rocky ground and some grassy ground. It's thick, heavy grass. Let's call that blocking as well. So we've got blocking impassable, we've got blocking rough, and we've got simply rough. And then we've got determined victory conditions and determined first player. The last player to paint a miniature calls even or odd. The last player to, hey, I'm a solo gamer, so we'll get through that just fine. First thing we need to do is determine victory conditions. To that end, we roll 2d6 and compare it to a chart. A result of a 9 means that we are going to be doing the Altars of Grief. After determining table sides, but before beginning deployment, place 3 small objective markers on the center line, one at the midpoint, and the other is 50. Well, we're going to do 7.5 inches. Remember, we're gaming half scale. It gives my 2 foot by 3 foot table. It feels more like a 4 by 6. Victory conditions just before units are removed in the Doom phase, check. The player with the most unbroken units within 6 inches of that marker scores 1 victory point. At the end of the game, most victory point wins. All right, so that's easy enough. But that happens after determining table sides. So that's the next thing. Rather than using colored gems, I am using the 3 giant Doom temples. This is originally scaled. I think this is like a D&D miniature, originally scaled for 28mm figures. But they work great. Look, I see those giant skulls there with the candles on them. I did go ahead and move the grass over just a little bit so we have some blocking terrain between our 3, at least 2 of the 3 objectives. Remember, blocks line of sight, rough going, blocks line of sight, and impassable. With that done, we needed to figure out who's going first, and I am going to roll 2d6. The red dice will be for the humans, and the humans will be the first player. I misspoke. When you win this initiative roll-off, you get to choose whether you want to be first player or not. The Bromans do want to be first player. Because they want this side of the table edge. They dropped their archers down behind this rough going. The Goblins then dropped their beasts here in the center of the table. We threw some spearmen down there and the Goblin King in the center. We went non-leader heavy cavalry and then light cavalry for the Goblins. Our general, Hopper, is down here on the left flank. And as you can see, we're going with a strong right punch, trying to take these 2 victory objectives, keep the Goblins off, and just defend this side of the field with these spearmen. That's the general plan. You know what? Go ahead and take that victory point. We're going to take these 2, and we are going to win. For their part, the Hobgoblins are harriers. They're mostly harassers with this light cavalry. They'll use that to try to whittle down the defenders, and then they'll send the general and the wolves in for the coup de grace. That's the general strategy for both sides. Before we start the game proper, there is one last thing we need to deal with, and that is fortune cards. A deck of 48 cards. You deal 4 out to each player, and then he holds those secretly in his hand, and he can play them during the game to surprise his opponent. Okay, so now we already see this is probably not the best for a solo war game, but to give you an idea of the flavor of some of these cards, you may get something like Crushing Charge. Play on a friendly unit at the end of... Oh, it's see-through, that's bad. At the end of the movement phase, if the unit advanced 6 inches or more and is now engaged, this unit gains critical hits, which is another one of those keywords. So a 1-turn superpower. Eager for battle. Play on a friendly unit at the end of the movement phase. If they advance 6 inches or more and is now engaged, that unit immediately discards 3 Doom tokens. We haven't talked about Doom tokens. Those are an interesting twist on casualty markers. We'll talk about Doom tokens here in just a moment. Basically, everybody on the table, as things stand, has 10 hit points. They can take 10 Doom tokens. When they take that 10th one, so what you normally think of as casualty, we're going to call it Doom today. And when you take 10 Doom, you are out of the game. However, now bear in mind, everybody has 10, which is a little odd, but there are keywords that can give your unit more or less doom. If they're cowards, then maybe this unit of spearmen, maybe these guys are peasants, and so they only have 8 doom if we have the right doom, if we purchased that penalty to allow ourselves more points to purchase upgrades elsewhere. What's important for today's fight is that both of our generals, the Goblin King and King Hopper here, because they have banners, every unit within 2 inches of them automatically gains, is it 1 or 2? They have more than 10. They can take a couple of extra hits before they are broken. You can purchase more inspiring leaders. Maybe they have a command of 2, which grants everybody that's nearby them 2 extra doom. Today, because they have command, both of our leaders have command and a battle standard, they're going to upgrade nearby units with 2 doom total. 1 for command, 1 for the standard. I don't know if we're ready to begin the game, but we're going to do it anyway. At the start of the round, we're going to call it a round because we are going to be doing some alternating activation, you draw a fortune card, which means you technically start off the game with 5. You get 4 during deployment, and then you draw 1 more. So both sides each have one of those, and I may throw some down at random. Now, because, remember, our Hobgoblins have the initiative. At the start of the phase, both the player without the token, you can use a token to remember who the first player is. I'm not doing that. Roll a d6 to seize the initiative. If it's equal to or higher than the current round number, the goblins can seize the initiative. So we're going to roll, and on a 1, they will seize it. Hey, look at that. The goblins are now the first. If it's 1 or higher, they may choose, if it's equal to or higher. So this is clever, because what it means is if you are the first player for the first round of the game, your opponent is guaranteed to succeed. You will always roll a 1 or higher on a d6. Clever. So now the goblins are the first player. Real quick, let's take a look at the round structure, because this is important, right? We do the 4 M's. We're going to start with magic, missile, movement, and melee, and then we do our morale. So actually it's the 5 M's, right? Magic, missile, movement, melee, morale. All right, cool. As we said, the magic round goes first. I don't have any wizards. I don't have any magic. We're skipping that. It's an introductory game. I keep saying that. I'm not going to say it anymore. You guys get it. Then we do the shooting phase. The first player activates one of his ranged units once. Well, nobody's in range, so we're not going to be doing any of that on this round. And then we do movement. The first player activates each of their units once in the order of their choosing. And the second player does the same. Move all your units. This guy moves all of his units. Let me do that real quick. The goblins have completed their movement. It's all pretty standard fare. They've moved up. They have seized these 2 victory objectives. But remember, the Hobgoblins have not moved yet. I wanted to show you how movement works within the context of Hobgoblin, because it's an interesting solution to a perennial problem. You get movement points, and our foot sloggers are going to get a total of 8 movement points. At half scale, each movement point can move you forward a half an inch, or you wheel a half an inch. You can retreat a quarter of an inch, or you can shuffle to either side a quarter of an inch for each of those movement points. Now, the reason that I can't just say, oh, well, you know what, why don't I just cut the movement points in half, is that you also have this thing called reform, which allows you to spin. How far can you spin? I think it's as far as you want. Ignore other units, friendly or enemy. Must not end reform. But you are distracted if you do that. And that's the first thing I want to do with our spear boys down here, because they are going to guard this flank. So using those rules, we're going to move up 2.5 inches to here. And then we are going to spend our last 5 points rotating like so. They are now distracted. Let's use a visual reminder of what distracted means. You are not allowed to end your turn in contact with an enemy if you are distracted. In other words, you can't wheel like that if you are planning on charging into contact. Our archers are going to stand there? I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and do the riders first. Now, these Roman knights have a total of, Hobgoblins, they have a total of 12 movement points. So if I want to move them up 6 inches straight ahead, I can do that. Kablow to right about there. Then these guys, if I want to do any wheeling, I need to save a little bit of movement, but I don't think they do. I think we're just going to ride them forward in a solid wave of horseflesh. Aha! Loose order units suffer no penalty when they move through rough ground. These guys have 8 movement points. We're going to move them up 3. They are moving into the rough ground, taking up positions of cover, and now our Hobgoblin archers, with a range of 12, will be able to start plinking away at the enemies to some effect. In retrospect, I think distracted doesn't need a token. All distracted means is you can't end your turn in contact. You can't end your maneuver in contact with an enemy. An enemy can still come after you, and I don't know if that's you suffer any penalties for being charged while distracted. If you have read through Hobgoblin and you know, leave a comment down there. It's a little unclear to me whether we leave this token here or not, so that if they are charged, so remember, if the Hobgoblins have first. One thing that's unclear to me is when the distracted goes away. Had the Hobgoblins moved first, they're not allowed to end their maneuver in contact with an enemy. But if an enemy subsequently charged them, what are the effects of distracted? I don't see that there are any. I think it just means you can't come into contact with an enemy if you are distracted. You're distracted by moving through rough ground, if you're a close order troop, or if you perform that reform. You wheel about your center point as far as you want. But what if you're charged? I don't know if there's a penalty or not. I'm not sure. So we'll have to go through and comb through the rules for that one little line later. Today I want to get to the Doom phase, and this is where you figure out which units are broken. As you can see, we're skipping melee because we're skipping morale because everybody's got all the morale, so we can tally up some victory points. Let's take a look at victory conditions. The side that has the most units within 6 inches of one of our dark altars will score 1 victory point. All right, so we got to count that up. Now, this altar over here, of course, has 1 Broman, 2 Broman. I misplayed this turn, and these archers, we're going to call them too far away. So that's 1 victory point to the Bromans for this feature. 6 inches from this guy is going to be a tie. Well, no, is it a tie? We've got the general within 6 inches of the middle, and the archers within 6 inches as well. So that's 2 victory points to the Bromans. There you go. 2 victory points for Team Human, and just 1. I think we can all agree that there's 1, 2, possibly 3 guys. I don't know that they need line of sight. It doesn't say. So our goblins are going to be stuck on just 1 victory point. So I misplayed this a little bit, and I guess we'll just kind of put that there. And that way I don't have to worry about it being knocked over or rolling around. So it's 2-1 at the end of this first turn. But I also noticed that these dark idols are treated as grim terrain. Anyone within 4 inches is going to gain a Doom token. And unfortunately for the Bromans, there's going to be 1 there. There's going to be 1 for these riders over here, and then 1 for these riders over here. So we have our first Doom tokens. Now, it's not, we haven't gone over that limit of 10 or 12, as the case may be, for, if you're near your leader. So that is the end of the turn, and the Bromans are doing reasonably well. Now we move on to the second turn, and we have to find out if the Broman seize the initiative and become the first player. They will only seize on a 2 or better. Hey, look at that, they have seized. So as the game goes on, I think that momentum will change. Now the Bromans have to do their magic first. But again, we're not doing any magic. We are, however, doing some missile fire. And we're going to alternate. So the first player is going to do his missile fire first. And that is these archers here. They have a shot. Their range is 12 inches. And when you fire your bows, when you shoot, you become distracted. I'm going to use a blue token to remind me. These guys are distracted. You use half of your attacks, rounding down, 12-inch range. Ranged versus beasts hit on a 4 or better. We count up the 4s. We got 2 hits. The beasts now have a Doom score of 2. Are these guys were these guys within 4 inches? They were not. So they didn't earn any Doom on the last turn. All right, so that's it for the shooting. Well, is it really? No, because these guys can fire as well. Now, do they want to? That's the question. I think we do. We're going to try to whittle these guys down a little bit. We'll take the shot. Now, they only have a range of 4 inches, but as you can see, they are within that 4 inches. And they also will be rolling 5 dice. But because they are firing at a close order, strongly defended unit, the Hobgoblins only hit on 6s. Hey, they get a pair of them, we'll take that. They also become distracted, and I think this is the value of the distracted marker because you have units that are firing outside of the movement phase. It's a lot easier to remember which ones have fired, which means these guys cannot move to contact now. Although, come to think of it, they really needed to hang on to that first player token, didn't they? Is there any other firing they want to do? Not with these guys. These guys want to close and have some fun. The guys over here on the right-hand side, as you look at it, those goblins are going to have some fun. We're done with missile. We did 1 and 1. 1 damage, 2 damage, so there's some effect. Bear in mind our heavy knights have a thing called Indomitable, a keyword. You cannot inflict... Once they have 5 doom, they are unaffected by bowfire. In other words, ranged attacks are meant for softening up units, and at least the heavily armored kind, and then you have to send somebody in to finish them off, and that may be the value of the beast. But we'll get to that in a coming turn. For now, we're done with missile, so what was next? But movement. Not distracted. Our big boy knights are going to go ahead and charge and come into contact with the Hobgoblins in that side. Now, in order to remember what we said, in order to wheel 1 inch, we have to spend a total of 2 movement points. We're going to wheel these guys. That leaves them with 8 movement points left to go. They're going to be able to race up to this point here to chase off those beasts. This may be a mistake. I haven't looked to see what their to-hit roll is. But the other thing it does is it puts them square in the middle of both of our victory objective markers. And then, it also cuts these guys off from shooting at the beast, but whatever, that's fine. Remember, these guys are within, the bowmen are within the 6 inches of the center victory point. And I guess that's about it on this side. On the other side, our spearmen are going to just spend their 8 points to shuffle to secure their flank like that. Remember, they can move up to 2 inches because they have those 8 points. And each point will move them a 1/4 inch. So you do the math. And that's less than 2 inches. I think look, it's fine. It's close enough, okay? So let's take a look at the right-hand side of the battlefield as we look at it first, and then we'll come back around and see what happens to these Hobgoblins. This light cavalry has been engaged, but have they? Light cavalry are agile. They can reform for just 2 points. And I've moved them up 3 points, and I want to show you why that's valuable. If we then pivot them around the center point, like so, they have only used 8 of their movement points, and they can still ride up another 3 inches, which puts them within the 4-inch range for zapping these spearmen. Of course, they are the second to move, so they don't have to worry about the spearmen then advancing on them. And likewise, and they are distracted. So let me get a couple of blue tokens for those guys. But at this point, this is where I don't think the distracted markers make much of a difference. So 2 points to wheel about that way, and then these guys will do likewise. They'll move up 3 inches, we'll spend them another 8, so it'll be 10, and then they are going to spend the other 2. So even though they have not moved very far, because they have that nimble special ability, they are able to wheel, move, and then wheel. And once you're distracted, it doesn't really matter. You can't be double distracted, right? And I think, I should point out also, while I was going through the rules, reviewing the movement, we get 5 turns total. So maybe we do have time to get through this whole battle. And I think, that being the case, we're going to go ahead and bring our leader over to back up our beastmen. He is going to spend 5 points, and then he can move up another 2.5. Well, that's probably too far. We'll stop him right there. And then our beasts are going to go ahead and they can, remember these guys are pretty nimble. That's going to cost them 2 points. And do we want to go ahead and close now with these guys, with the Hobgoblin General, or do we want to wait until next turn? We are going to disengage from this fight. Our light cavalry are not meant to get involved in a stand-up brawl with heavy cavalry. They have been successfully chased off. They are going to fall back a total of a half an inch. That's going to cost 2 movement points. And then we have to decide what we want to do for the next turn. We could, that's 2 of our 14 points. We could about face for 2 points to 4, fall back. We're going to want to about face one more time. That's the thing with these guys, they're really nimble, so let's just run the math. If they fall back an inch, or half an inch, about face, and they need about face again, that's 6 inches. So they could fall back a total of, they still have 8 movement points. They could still fall back 4 inches, but I think we want to leave them within 6 inches of the temple. So we're only going to basically drop them back to here. That way we don't give up too many victory points, I don't think. And that is going to be the end of their movement. They've got the movement points to do it. They're fine. They're still distracted, but at least they're not engaged in a melee. Or are they? Now, when this happens, when you disengage, your opponent does get 1 free whack at you. So I'm going to need to grab 10d6, and let's see what happens. I should point out, the heavy cavalry has devastating charge. When you move 3 inches, 6 inches in the regular game, you reduce your 2-hit number by 1. In this case, they are already hitting on 2s. Can't be reduced any further. A 1 is always a miss in this game. So we're going to roll and count up all of the not 1s that we roll. We got a pair of 1s, so on our dice we did a total of 8 more doom. That means our doom for these guys has risen to 9. And that being the case, I'm going to use a red chip for the first 5 doom. And probably wound counters would be better for this, or wound dice trackers, but we're sitting on 9 doom. That doesn't affect their fighting or their shooting ability. In the doom phase, we tally up our victory points. As you can see, this particular idol has a total of 2 goblin units. The archers are too far away to affect this one. 2 units for the Bromans means, and 2 for the goblins means this one is, there's no victory points. For this one, you've got a total of 1, 2, 3 Broman units that are close enough to affect it, and just 1, 2 goblin. That means the Broman score a 3rd victory point. Over here, you've got 2 units to 1, and the hobgoblins are up to 2 victory points. So it's still anybody's fight, but it's not looking good for the goblins, particularly with this unit with 9 doom. If they take 1 more doom, they will be classed as broken. It's the end of the turn. We now move on to round number 3. And on round number 3, if the goblins can roll a 3 or higher, they will take the first move back. And look at that. He is the first player, which means he's going to get to do everything first. Once again, we don't have any magic. Then we do our missile phase. These guys are going to go ahead and shoot at, let's go ahead and shoot at this unit this time. They only get the 5 dice, remember, but they do hit on 6s. And a pair of 6s ain't bad, brother. So that takes our general up to 3 doom. And then, so they've fired. They are distracted. Where's my distracted token? Our archers now are going to have no viable targets. This target, I don't think they can fire through that gap. I'll have to go back and check. I do know that archers have an arc of fire. The unit has to be in their front arc. Draw a straight line across the front of these guys, and everybody on that side of the table can be fired at. If the line of sight can be drawn from the center front to any part of the unit, and if we put our 12-inch marker down, there's the center, any part of the unit, those beasts are subject to another round of bow fire. I don't remember what that is. I think that's going to be 3 more hits. I'm right. They're hitting on 4 up. Remember, this game is supposed to take place in deep, dank caverns. I don't have any cavern terrain, so we're doing it in the grass fields as usual. Do we have any other units? So oh, I forgot. These guys have to do all of their firing. And we are going to do that. I should have had these 2 units firing at this spearman for a total of 10. And all the stats and everything are... Hold on, scratch that. These archers only have a range. The light cavalry only have a range of 4 inches. They don't have a shot. This light cavalry does have a shot. Hitting on 6s, they're going to add 1 doom to the spearmen, and they are going to be distracted, meaning they can't charge. Not that we would charge anyway. They only ever hit these guys. The light cavalry only do damage to spears on 6s, although they would get to roll twice as many dice. That is going to be the end of the missile fire turn, and then once again, now we move on to movement phase. And the goblins, as the first player, get to move first. At the conclusion of the goblin movement turn, it looks a little something like this. Our light cavalry over here on the right-hand side of the battlefield have swung around, and they didn't close with the spearmen. The spearmen now have to decide whether they want to advance to close with those goblins. Do our archers want to spin and start focusing on this side of the field? I think they do. In fact, we are going to rotate them. Got to make that choice. They're going to be distracted, which, I don't want to put a token down because I'm just going to take it off shortly. The only other real movement we have left is, do we want these spearmen to charge forward? Do we want these knights to charge forward? And we don't. These knights are perfectly content where they are. I guess we'll move them up. No, we're going to leave them right there. They don't have to worry about any more bow fire because the goblins are too far away. Interesting little puzzle here. Do the goblins stay within 4 inches and risk getting charged by the heavy cavalry? Or, because it all depends on what happens next turn, right? If they're the first player, they can shoot, and then they're the first player, they can run away. But you have to be first player, and you don't know whether or not you're going to be first player. That little bit of uncertainty makes light cavalry very difficult to use. We already control... Oh, you know what I forgot? Each of these objective markers is dumping doom onto our units. Let me throw some more doom down for that. Based on my recollection, the archers picked up a couple because they're close enough to count for both of these two. The spearmen, likewise, were close enough to both these two, so they picked up a couple of more. And then, of course, one for the... Are they supposed to have one for the... Oh, that was for the bowfire, right. So we're all set. And then one more doom for at least this guy. Well, actually, both of these guys picked up a doom from that dark tower, or what do you call it, the dark altar. And now we're ready to go. We have done all of the moving. And do we want the spearmen to close with these guys? Yeah, let's do that. I think if we can chase them off, are we close enough? They're only move 4 inches. Is that right? Yeah, they have 8 movement points, half an inch apiece. We're going to take advantage of this one little reprieve, and we're going to race up, and we are going to do some battle with those goblins. Not distracted, distracted. That's the end of movement. Now we can do some melee. Let's start from left. Let's start from right to left, since this is a simple stand-up fight. Still going to be 10 dice. Our spearmen are hitting on 3s, and they're going to do a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits to the cavalry. The goblin light cavalry are going to counterattack, and they probably should have stayed back out of the charge range, huh? Because they're only hitting on 6s. Well, they get 2 hits of their own. That ain't too bad. So from 3, those Broman spears are going to go to 5 themselves. For this melee, King Hopper has a choice to make. He's got 10 dice, but he has to commit to divvying them up among the 2 units that he is engaged with. He is going to try to drive off the beasts, meaning he'll roll 3 dice against the Goblin King for this turn, and gets a 4, 5, and a 1. And I'm just going to put those out of the way over here. 4, 5, and 1. And then the other 7 he's using to try to drive off those beasts. And that's not nearly as good. All of these 1s are a definite miss. He will be hitting the beasts on 2s. So we'll replace this. That's a total of 4 hits on the beast. They are up to 10 doom. Normally, they'd be broken. Well, let's not get move into the doom phase yet. Let's just consider that he is only hitting the king here on 5s. He only does 1 wound to the Goblin King. And now he's going to have to eat some attacks of his own. Beasts attacking heavy cavalry are going to be hitting on 6s. And that monster is going to be hitting on 2s. So he's going to take all of these. Let's do the beast first. Looking for 6s. And he gets a total of 1 hit. And then anything but a 1. That should be a 3 here. I bumped the point counter. So anything but a 1. So we already took 1 hit. And then we'll roll a bunch of d6s. So anything, he only rolled 2 1s. So that's going to be 10 more hits on King Hopper. Just take my word for it. So he's got a total of 14 doom. And it's not looking good for him, is it? That is the end of the melee phase. Now we can move on to the doom phase. Our spearmen are just within... You know, I have a 6-inch. Here we go. Our spearmen, if we put our ruler right on top of our wizard guy, right on top of his head, our spearmen are just barely within 6 inches. So they count. The goblins are going to score 1 victory point because they have 2 units close to this fella. For this fella, this victory point objective, our 6 inches will encompass a total of 1, 2, 3 Bromans. So the Bromans go up to 4. And just 2 for the goblins. And then for these last and leftmost Doom Temple, we've got a total of 1, 2, 3. And with the rotation, do we give it? Yeah, let's go ahead and give it to the Bromans. For a total of 5. Then we have to divvy out our Doom tokens. Everybody within 4 inches, remember. Is it everybody within 4? No, it's within 4 to score it. No, it's within 6 to score it. But if you're within 4, then you gain a Doom token. Meaning, oh, is it? Well, let's go to the rules. Yeah, all right, so these Dooms shouldn't be here. It's 4 inches. It delivers a Doom token to everyone within 4 inches. The archers, the spearmen, and these goblin light cavalry are outside of the 4 inches. They won't earn any Doom tokens this turn, but these goblins will. And now our spearmen will. Our Roman leader will. Boy, they're just racking them up, aren't they? And our heavy cavalry over here will as well. And then for the goblins, we have 2 more to deliver. That takes the beast to 11 and our goblin king to 2. Now we can check. We did our victory conditions. Now we have to check our doom levels. Who has more than their allotted doom? Now you might think that our beasts over here, since they're above 10, they would break. But remember, the leader lets them withstand an additional 2 doom tokens. So at 11, they're not quite enough to break. The Romans really needed to do 1 more hit to these guys, although they did as many as they can. However, old King Hopper here, that's a 5, he has a total of 15 doom. So his force is going to just run off the field. Here at the end of turn number 3. All units within 4 inches, I probably should have left him there first. He doesn't have any units within 4 inches right now, but if he did, they would receive a doom token as well. If that doom token pushed them over the top, and again, remember, because our big boy took off, nobody gets the benefit of the +2 to their courage. You can see a cascading effect that, you know, if the Goblin King were to break right now, our beasts would also break because they lose the benefit of the +2. They don't. In fact, as long as they stay within 4 inches of the leader, I think it's 6 inches actually, they will receive that benefit. But that's it for turn number 3. We move on to turn number 4. And who is our first player? It was the goblins on that last turn. Wasn't it? Yeah, it was the goblins. So we got to find out if the goblins can regain the initiative on a 4 or better. They do not. Wait, it was goblins, Bromans, goblins. Now the Bromans are trying to seize initiative and they fail. So the goblins get to hang on to the initiative here. Once again, we have no magic to do, so we have to do our missile fire next. The Bromans absolutely are going to fire. Well, does it do them any good? Yeah, these guys, they're going to be firing at a unit with less than 5. They are going to be hitting on 5s, which will take this goblin light cavalry up to 2 doom. Not great. And then there's no missile fire on the part of the goblins. They're happy with where they're at. And I think the next thing we want to do is movement. the goblins get to move first. We're gonna. What do we do? Do we flood this guy? Does this tower affect movement? Yes, it does. Which means this heavy cavalry is largely protected from being charged in the flank by these guys, by these wolves. We've been treating each of these as though they block movement, and we are going to continue that. The one thing we can say for sure is that we will be wheeling this light cavalry. We're going to try to hit these guys hard. The light cavalry is going to wheel a total of 3 inches to here, and they still have, we can do another, so that's 4 inches, takes them up to 8, and then they're going to hit the spearmen in the rear flank like that. And they're not distracted. We can take all those distracted markers off. We're going to leave. Yeah, you know what? For this turn, we are absolutely going to bring these guys up to here. We'll take the charge because for this one turn, we need victory points. And we're even going to, do they have the range? They can move a total of 7 inches. They can move that far. Yeah. We're going to close. We're not going to give the heavy knights the benefit of the devastating charge. And we don't want to do, we're just going to leave these fellas right here. I think we're good on movement. I'm actually going to bring him up to here. And then to draw this aggro, because our archers are going to spin and they're going to start plinking away at the Goblin King. I think the thing to do, actually the better play here is probably to try to get outside. He's pretty quick. We're going to try to move to where we are outside that 4-inch radius, but within 6 inches of each of these. So probably to right about here. And with his movement, we could move pretty close to fighting these guys, but I don't need to. And likewise, we got to bring these guys up with him somewhere to right about there. I think that's probably the way to do it. Now, they will continue to draw. Ooh, no, we need to leave them back here. If they take one more doom, they will be out of the fight, and we need them to help us preserve these victory points. Which means probably, are they agile? It probably means just drifting back a couple of inches so that they're outside that 4, but inside the 6. So there's your 6. They're going to have to pick one, I think. Can we get them right there? Does that do it? Outside the 4, inside the 6? Yeah, there's our 4. So they won't be drawing doom, but they will be taking fire from the archers. That's probably a good way to do it. And if that's the case, why don't we just do the same with this guy? I think that's okay. I think that's good for the purposes of scoring those victory points. We're just going to leave him back there. Now we have to do and this is only 5 victory points. Why are you tipping like that? We did our movement, and now we have to do our melee. And let's start with a devastating one over here. Our knights are going to be hitting on, like, everything but a 1. So they're going to get a total of 9 more hits on these guys, and they are going to be out. 9 hits puts them well over the number that they need, but they do get to counterattack. So we'll see what happens with that. They will be hitting on 6s, and they score a pair of 6s here. They're already at 4. The knights are going to go to 6 doom, and then we have another melee down on this side. And I will roll for the outmaneuvered. Outmaneuvered means your courage is reduced by 1 for every enemy that's attacking you in the flank or the rear. With just 1 unit in the rear, the spearmen have a courage of 9. If their doom reaches 9 on this turn, which is very doable, the light cavalry only score hits on 6s, but each unit gets to make that attempt, and each unit gets 10 dice. So very doable here. And there's our 1, 2, 3 for the first group. And then we're going to roll for the second one because it may be the case that we need that extra hit. No, we don't. We got just if another unit runs off, then that doom. So there's our 1, 2, 3. We are up to a total of 9. the conditions could change, and these guys could get back to a position where their courage goes back up to 10. As it stands at 9, they are going to get, now again, they have to assign 3 attacks to the guy in their rear. We'll roll that first. Whoops, pull that, whoop. Start over, make sure we're doing this on the legit. 1, 5, and 6, and then they will attack 7. What are these guys at? These guys are already at 8. They are hitting on 3 or better, and they get a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits. So that takes the guys to their front up to 13 doom, and we probably should have just gone 5 and 5. That might have been better, but we didn't. We're learning, going a little too fast. That will be the end of the melee for turn number 4, and that brings us to the doom phase. As with the last time, let's start on the right-hand side of the screen. On the right-hand side of the screen, there are 2 goblin units and 1 human unit for 1 victory point for the goblins. The one in the center, there is within 6 inches of 1, 2 human units, but now 1, 2, 3 goblin units. The goblins go up to 5 victory points. And over here on the left flank, as we said, we've got 1, 2, 3 units of humans, taking the Bromans up to 6 victory points. If I can find the 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. And that will be the end. Now, we've got 2 units over here that are within 4 inches of the leftmost, so they both earn a doom marker. And over here, we've got 1, 2, 3 units. So that will be another doom marker for the guy that's already... Oh, and there's our 10th for the spearmen and our 5th for the light cavalry. And now we have to check to see who has a doom that is too high. For the purposes of removing figures, they all jump off the table at the same time. So maybe that cascading effect isn't so much. So this unit is now broken. Let's work through this exercise in a little more detail. Anybody that has more doom than courage is broken. The first thing that happens is friendly units within 4 inches... Kablow, gain a doom token. This goblin light cavalry is broken. That issues a doom token to this unit. The beasts over here are not broken because they only have 11. Remember, their courage is now 12 because the leader is nearby. So we've divvied out the doom tokens, and then you remove broken units. They're all removed simultaneously. So forget what I said last turn. These goblins are going to go bye-bye. After cleaning things up, the battlefield looks a little something like this. 6 doom to the light cavalry down here for the goblins. And we just have 2 more units of Bromans. The spearmen with 10 doom, they did run off, but they are far enough away that they didn't issue any more doom tokens to their allies. The score is 5 points to the goblins to 6 points for the humans. Do the Bromans seize the initiative on a 5 or a 6? They do not. There's no bow fire for the goblins, but we do have 1 shot by these archers. And it's not going to do any good against the beast, is it? Close order units and free order units are implacable and do not suffer from the effects of bow fire beyond 5. Loose order units, like these wolves, do. With 2 hits, that will push our wolves to 13 doom. And they are going to run off after this turn is over. However, we get into some interesting considerations. The fact that they stick around until the end of the game. They can still score points. It doesn't matter how many doom they have. So with the bowfire done, then we move on to the movement, and the goblins get to move first. And the goblins say, you know what? I might as well go ahead and just park myself here and here so that I can score both of these units. We'll run these guys up to here. They're going to score a total of 3 victory points. The humans now can say, well, if I have 2 units, this is where the movement comes into play, and we can turn these guys. Where's the 6-inch mark? If they can make it to right here, they will move with 5. They'll only be able to move 3.5 inches. That may be the deciding factor in this game. If they're not nimble. These heavy cavalry need to spin all the way around, and that costs them 5 movement points. They have 7 left. They're only going to be able to move an additional 3.5 inches to about there. And what that's going to do is we don't have any melee on this turn. So we go right to counting up the victory points. Over here, the goblins score the right-hand doom marker to go up to 6 points. The centermost is going to be within, they made it to within 6 inches. Well, no, did they? There's our center point, and they're just shy by about 1/4 of an inch. The goblins will score this one to bring them up to 7, and then we have a total of 2 units within 6 inches by rotating their outside. And look at that, the goblins have won the game with a total of 8 victory points. They've got 2 units parked on each of these. We should have brought these guys up because then it would have been contested. That's right, during the movement phase. Had we done that, then the final score would be 7 to... it wouldn't matter, would it? It would still be 7 to 6 because you would score 0 points on each of these. Regardless, we didn't do that. We should have been looking a little bit ahead. The goblins have they've squeaked out a very narrow victory after the Bromans got ahead. And then we can do the doom phase where these guys go, oh, I've got too many doom, I'm broken, this guy's going to earn 1 more. The beasts cause a doom token on the leader, and then at the end, the beasts will run off. So if we had a 6th turn, this game could wind up going into the favor of the Bromans, but we don't, right? Ifs and nuts, candy and nuts, you know how it works. So kind of an interesting game. We took a little bit longer. I got through a full game. That's kind of cool. Maybe a little bit of longer video today, but there was enough kind of unusual stuff going on. You know, you're laying casualties down, but you're not taking them off the table until after victory points are scored. A little bit of gamification going here, but it does run fairly smooth. Now, I routinely during this battle referred back to this chart. It's just easier for me to go, okay, yeah, heavy infantry are fighting beasts. They are going to be hitting on 2+. But you could also look at it in terms of heavy, close order versus loose order are going to be hitting on 3s. And then because the strong attack and the weak defense, that's basically it's a +1 to each of the die rolls. So that knocks us down to doing all of our hits on 1s. You can think about it that way if you're more comfortable with charts. You can use the chart. If you're more comfortable with modifiers, you can go with the modifiers. Those keywords work really well. And it's an interesting way of presenting the same information using 2 different philosophies of game design. So there's some interesting stuff going on in here. And I think after your 2nd or 3rd game of really internalizing how these keywords work, I think this game would play crazy fast and crazy smooth. But it is first and foremost a game, and that may trouble some of you guys who treat this as more of a simulation. There's a lot of things going on that are a little counterintuitive with respect to traditional war games. But if you want traditional war games, there's tons of them out there. If you're looking for something new and different, maybe you want to give the Hobgoblin a shot. Till next time, brother, I'm praying for you.